The Miami Grand Prix is over, and it was once again victory for Oscar Piastri and McLaren, as Piastri becomes the first McLaren driver since Mika Hakkinen to win 3 Grand Prix in a row. But now F1 is moving from Miami to Imola for the first round of the European portion of the season, as it is the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, which means that once again it is time for my preview and predictions. This is a series where I'll be previewing and then at the end of the video giving out my early predictions for the Grand Prix. If you enjoyed the video then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, F1 is heading to Imola now, and McLaren are absolutely on a roll after they dominated the Miami Grand Prix and were a lot faster than any of the competition, as they were lapping a second a lap faster than Max Verstappen after they managed to overtake him. But next up, it is Imola, and Imola is a completely different circuit to Miami. In Miami, the circuit has concrete runoff everywhere, but at Imola, there is grass and gravel surrounding the outside of the circuit, meaning that any small mistake can and will be punished. The Imola circuit features a mixture of medium speed corners with some very tight corners, making it an interesting challenge. The Tamburello chicane is a pretty tight chicane and is the biggest braking zone on the circuit. From there, the speed builds up though as the cars go through the Villeneuve chicane, and there are the other medium speed corners such as the Piratella and Acqua Minerale, before the cars have to make their way through the very slow corners such as the Variante Alta and the 2 Ravazza corners. Overall, you could class Imola as a front limited circuit, but the rear tyres do take a bit of a beating, as good traction is required on the exit of Tamburello, Tosa and the Variante Alta. Due to the nature of the circuit, the teams are most likely to be bringing medium levels of downforce, which is a little bit more than what we just saw at Miami. The Emilia Romagna Grand Prix has historically been pretty low when it comes to tyre wear, and also Imola has the largest pit lane time loss of the season, which doesn't really promote more pit stops, and because of this, Pirelli has opted for 2025 to take a bit of a risk and bring a step softer compound for this weekend, which means that for the first time in 2025, we will see a brand new compound being used, as the hard tyre will be the C4 tyre, the medium tyre will be the C5 tyre, and the soft compound will be the brand new C6 compound. Last year there was a total of just 26 pit stops, as the vast majority of drivers did a one stop using one set of mediums and one set of hard tyres. Due to the length of the pit lane, the time lost is absolutely massive, but hopefully with Pirelli bringing a step softer tyres, we might see some teams being forced to do an additional pit stop in the Grand Prix to bring some much needed strategy to the race. Overtaking at Imola is typically very tricky, and there are not a great deal of places for on-track overtaking, and you can see that as last year there was a total of just 30 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the Imola circuit features just the one DRS zone, and that is down the pit straight on the run into Tamburello. I have a feeling the FIA might actually opt to increase the length of the DRS zone slightly to try and promote some more overtaking. Also, hopefully the softer tyres does promote a little bit more strategy, and with that, we could see some more overtakes. Last year, the pole position lap time was set by Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, and Verstappen set a lap time of a 1:14.746. During that lap, Verstappen reached a top speed of 340 km per hour, which is 211 miles per hour. In the Grand Prix itself, the race fastest lap was set by George Russell in the Mercedes, and George set a time of a 1:18.589. This year, with the softer tyres, I anticipate that we are going to see some lightning times, especially in qualifying. I just want to say if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. But now, let's get back to the video, and let's talk about Williams and Racing Bulls. For Williams, the Miami Grand Prix was an incredible result, and it was a circuit that suited their car perfectly, as we saw a fantastic performance by both Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, as Albon finished the race in 5th place and beat both Ferrari cars and also Kimi Antonelli on pace alone. And Carlos Sainz finished right behind Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, and this was by far the strongest performance that we have seen from Williams in a number of years. But going into Imola, I expect that they will struggle a little bit more, and we will see a closer fight from the Racing Bulls team, as Racing Bulls tend to do pretty well at Imola, as they do plenty of testing at this circuit, and the circuit is one that should suit their car quite nicely, as it is slightly higher downforce than the Miami circuit. For Racing Bulls though, it is just a question of if they can keep it all together when it comes to the Grand Prix, as strategy and race pace tends to still be a bit of a weakness for them. For Ferrari then, the Miami Grand Prix was frankly a disaster. They were beaten by a Williams on pure pace, and the strategy calls were a bit of a nightmare. In general, Charles Leclerc was the faster driver, however due to the timing of the VSC, Leclerc was unable to maximise the time saved by pitting under VSC as he had to wait for an additional lap, whereas Lewis Hamilton was able to fully maximise the VSC, which fully brought him back into the race as he had fresh medium tyres, and Ferrari then spent a couple of laps letting Leclerc and Hamilton fight, which used up precious performance in Hamilton's tyres before actually doing the swap. Once they did the swap, the medium tyres had lost their best life, and Ferrari then had to swap the cars back, meaning that neither driver was actually able to fight Antonelli, when in reality, both drivers could have had a shot at overtaking Kimi, and this highlights where Ferrari are still awful. They must improve when it comes to strategy, as this was not good enough and was frankly embarrassing for them. The pace was also lacking. The team are bringing an upgrade to Imola, but as they've already confessed, this will likely not be enough to bring them into the fight against Mercedes, as they look to be a little bit weaker when it comes to the rear suspension of the car. For Red Bull then, the Miami Grand Prix showed that even though Max Verstappen has the one-lap pace, the Red Bulls just cannot fight McLaren in race trim currently, especially on a real limited circuit. Thankfully for them, it could be argued that Imola is more of a front limited circuit, which could bring Max and the Red Bulls back into the hunt just a little bit, and with Imola being a more tricky circuit for overtaking, if Verstappen can get on pole, then he might just be able to win the race with a defensive masterclass, like we saw last season at the very same circuit. Teammate Yuki Tsunoda had a tricky race, scoring just the 1 point, and Tsunoda will be looking to try and score a few more points at the Imola circuit. He should be getting the upgrade that Verstappen got at Miami, which should really help him, as it does look like that the upgrade has helped Red Bull just a little bit. For Mercedes then, George Russell had another race where he didn't really do a great deal, but he somehow found himself on the podium, as George Russell very nicely kept his nose clean and waited for the opportunity to present itself. And well, it very much did for him, and he took full advantage of that. Teammate Kimi Antonelli had another strong race, and showed maturity on track beyond his years and his experience. Going into Imola, I expect that Mercedes will be behind both McLaren drivers and also Verstappen, as I do see him having a stronger weekend, but Kimi Antonelli is definitely getting there in race pace, and after the Miami sprint qualifying, it is just a matter of time before we see Antonelli on the podium, and well, Imola could be a good weekend for him, as this is a circuit where he does have a lot of previous experience. Finally, for McLaren then, the Miami Grand Prix was another perfect weekend for them, as it was an absolute dominant performance by them in race trim. No one could get close to Piastri and Norris, as both McLaren drivers finished over 30 seconds ahead of the next car, and my biggest fear is that Imola could be more of the same. The higher downforce is typically where McLaren are very strong. The main issue that they have is the overtaking part, and Imola is pretty tricky to overtake on, unlike Miami, so they need to ensure that they are first and second. If they are behind Verstappen, then it could be very tricky for them to win the Grand Prix, as I could see Verstappen making life very difficult when it comes to them trying to overtake. Oscar Piastri is in the form of his life now, and he has won 3 races in a row, and is now 16 points clear of teammate Lando Norris, who is in second place. For Lando Norris, it was a great recovery, as Lando recovered very nicely from an early race incident between himself and Verstappen. But Lando needs to be careful not to get involved in something similar at Imola, because if he does, then he might not be quite so lucky, as there is plenty of grass and gravel waiting for any drivers who go off track. So with that in mind then, what are my early predictions for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola? Well, I think that the top midfield team and midfield driver will be Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. That is, if Racing Bulls can actually put a good race together. But what about pole position? Well, for pole position, I'm actually going to go for Max Verstappen in the Red Bull to take pole position. And yeah, I do think that could genuinely happen. But what about the top 5 in the Grand Prix? Well, for P5, I'm going to go for Kimi Antonelli. P4 will be George Russell. P3 will be Lando Norris in the McLaren. P2 will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. And yeah, I'm going to go for Oscar Piastri to make it 4 race wins in a row. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.